Welcome back to the first day of the rest of your life, guys. Monday Evening Football Daily Show. We're back. I'm Scott. I'm here with Nick, and we got some great takes for you. Talk a little bit about the NFL going on, what's going on around the league. And, guys, tonight we have something exciting for you. Our first Monday Evening Football stream, if you will. We have an exciting thing with the Monday Evening Football stream where me and Nick, we're going to be previewing each Monday Evening Football game. So super excited about that. Tonight, I believe we have the Raiders versus the Ravens to kick it off. It's got the little, the blue necklace here. And so I think we know who I might think is going to win that game. But I think, Nick, they have to tune in to see.
Got to tune in, guys. You got to tune in to see for sure. Yeah. I think, obviously we're going to have some predictions out there every week, but got to tune in. That's all it is. That's really all it is, right? It's that easy.
And I think just to kind of give the people at home something to expect from it is that we're going to be making predictions, and I guarantee you all of our predictions will probably be accurate, more accurate than a simulated Madden game.
At least one or two,
I would say.
At least one or two.
At least one.
So, the law of averages would say that we'll get some right.
Yes. So tune into that later tonight. That'll be, I believe, 8 Central Time, 9 Eastern, and then whatever it is on those West Coast, who knows really what those time zones are out there. But yeah, exactly, math. So it does make it hard. But luckily tonight we do have an East Coast team versus a West Coast team. So it's that, age-old adage of, Tupac Biggie type of thing is what we got cooking for tonight's preview. I don't know if that's going to sway some of the decision-making, some of the predictions. I think maybe for Nick, it might. I don't want to say for sure, but I think that it could come into play. We're going to analyze it all, guys. We're going to analyze it all. That's going to be an aspect of it. But I tell you what, another aspect of it is who have these guys picked up in the offseason? Who have they drafted? How have they made their team better? Did they cut all their guys? Are they rebuilding? What exactly are they doing? And more importantly, does their team feel validated? Do the players on their team feel like, hey, this team's bought into me? Because I'll tell you what, Nick, there's one player. Well, there's probably a couple players out there, but I think there's maybe one player as of late that is maybe a little upset, a little uncertain if he's going to be with a certain team. And I say that's probably Julio Jones after being left off the schedule announcement. I mean, you're going to talk about putting all of your players out there and you're not putting your superstar player on there. To me, that indicates maybe you are moving away from him, maybe not in a trade sense or something like that, but maybe you're trying to move your franchise in a different direction than the face of Julio Jones, which I will say, good enough looking face to be the face of the franchise.
Absolutely. I mean, it's still Julio Jones at the end of the day. I think, if you're looking at it, I think he's definitely getting traded. Those rumors were swirling around the draft. You leave him off of your shit for your schedule release. I mean, it's all indicative that he gets traded. The question is where. I think an NFC team seems unlikely. So I think anyone in the AFC East could be a player for Julio Jones. I could see any of those 4 teams being a player for Julio Jones. I think he's definitely out of there. I just think it's going to be hard for them to trade him to an NFC team. So, I think if you're an AFC team, you're lucky, but it's fucking Julio Jones, man. I mean, on every team in the league, basically, outside of probably 3 other teams, he's going to be the number 1 receiver the minute he walks into the building. That's just a fact.
On 90% of teams, probably.
That's it. Yeah. You think he's getting a little older? Is that what?
Well, I do think he's getting a little older. But here's another thing: is the Atlanta Falcons for the past 3 to 4 years, I haven't really watched. I haven't analyzed much of their game, and I think maybe for 1 or 2 of those years, Julio was hurt, potentially maybe wasn't making it through the season healthy all the way through. So it's just, I don't know, that Atlanta Falcons team is interesting to me because it seemed like for quite a while there they had some star-studded players and they were a very good team, and it just seems like they've fallen off, But so I guess that's maybe where my confusion with Julio Jones lies because, one, I just haven't seen enough of him in recent years. I know he's a playmaker, freak human athlete,
A monster, really,
So,
just a walking,
yeah, a
just a
monster.
specimen,
And
really. Like he
yeah,
is an absolute monster.
yeah. And I do say 90% of the teams because you do have the Devontae Adams, Stephon Diggs, you know, those types of caliber receivers that it's not so clear if Julio Jones goes to those teams if he is the number one receiver on that team. That's why I say 90%.
Right.
But yeah, any team he goes to outside of those few teams, yeah, immediately playmaker, So it will be interesting to see where he falls. But yeah, freak human being can definitely just go up and get the ball.
Absolutely, all day long. Dude's a monster. He's gonna help someone. He's gonna help someone. I mean, that's for
I
sure.
think I think I
you,
oh for sure.
you got to think like realistically. He played, in the Super Bowl against like, the Tom Brady experience, and he plays at basically the most ridiculous Super Bowl of all time, right? 28-3, that whole deal. And you just got to wonder if he wants to get back, right? That's a curiosity that I have too on his side of things. Is like, is he going to go try to ring chase or not? How much leverage does he actually have, right, with his trade situation? You don't know for sure, but I think that's
and that's
yeah.
That is like the sloppy thing when it does come to trades. And I mean, with this Julio Jones speculation, that's what it is. A lot of speculation,
Absolutely.
Like we're talking about a schedule announcement,
Yeah, right.
And him not being on there,
right,
So
right.
Yeah, it's a slower news week, but hey, you got to fill it with something.
Yeah, no doubt.
But speaking of sloppy trades, sloppy situations, let's just shoot over to the other dumpster fire that's happening in the NFL, and that'd be the Houston Texans and what's going on with Deshaun Watson, which, to be honest, ever since everything has come out, I know he's getting closer to I think settling outside of court maybe, or there was something that I read, but I haven't heard much about Deshaun Watson after everything came out. It just seemed like the things shifted to the matters that he had to take care of in his personal life that, hopefully he didn't do, because you don't ever want to see someone do that. But if he did, he does need to be held accountable for that. But if we're sticking strictly to football, David Cooley, he said, I'm not really answering any questions on Deshaun right now, which, to be honest,
sounds
probably,
about right. Sounds about right. Yep.
A smart answer. He's probably up there like, cut it out, David Cooley. Cooley. Sorry, different guy.
It's a different guy.
But
full house man himself.
Yes. So, yeah, just a very unique situation happening in Houston there. And I know our boy Pat over there, he's talking about that guy Jack Easterby. But yeah, I don't expect much to happen out of Houston this year or next year. To be honest, I could really see that team being removed from the NFL and then maybe brought back another few years later, because that's just seems what happens with the Texans. So
the Texans have they have had an interesting historical as a franchise. They have a very interesting history. They may be headed back to the David Carr days. I agree with
you. Yes. So just crazy how they're handling that situation over there. But some other situations that are developing around the league that I'm kind of excited for. But I am kind of excited for Urban Meyer and what he's doing down in Jacksonville. And I think a lot of people are looking at him and are just a little bit in disbelief in what he's doing down in Jacksonville, because he looks like they're trying to move Travis Etienne, who they just drafted, I believe first round, correct?
Yeah, I think so. Yep.
And they're looking to make him into like the next Percy Harvin. I guess another guy that might fit like the role is like a Tariq Cohen, like out of the back, catching. But I think what Urban Meyer's doing is he's getting his best players on the field, and he doesn't care. Maybe you're not in the position that you're most comfortable in, but you're going to give us the best chance to win. And that's what I think Urban Meyer is his take is down in Jacksonville. We're going to see how it plays out. But I'm going to be that is a team that I'm going to be eager to watch on Monday Evening Football this year.
Yeah, Urban Meyer, man, that was always his thing, right? Even when he was when he was coaching in college, his biggest thing was that football is simple. You just have to get the ball into the hands of your best players. That's all it is, basically. Is you figure out ways to get the ball in the hands of your best players. It seems like he's taken that theory to the NFL, but I'll be honest, like all that gimmicky college bullshit never works in the NFL. Look at Chip Kelly, that dude flamed out. Like it just never works. Now, granted, with Chip Kelly,
you get 1 year out of it.
It'll work early, exactly. It'll work early because it's a new teams aren't exactly expecting it. But I think Urban Meyer, I'll be curious to see the way that he is actually going to have that team. You know, the like I'm curious to see how it all fits together and how much of that gimmicky bullshit he tries to pull because it's the Jaguars do not have a very good roster. And I think if you're trying to run a lot of gadget stuff, you're going to move this guy over here, move that guy over here. Like it is a little bit different. I think, you know, when he's speaking about Percy Harvin, I think he's speaking about Percy Harvin in the role where he had him at Florida, right? And it's like, yeah, Percy Harvin in the NFL was a very different thing. You know, he's a very different thing. And I'm not saying he wasn't a good player, but I just think I'm curious to see how Urban Meyer actually does a lot of this stuff. I'm not a huge Urban Meyer fan personally, so, you know, that's just kind of my take on it. But I think early on, Jaguars probably win a game that they shouldn't early on in the year. I bet you there's a game you could bet where they're like where they're a home underdog that you could probably, you know, they might be able to make something happen. You know, especially with fans in the stands. You got the Tebow experience there. It's going to be a fucking roller coaster down there. I tell you what. But
for sure.
Either way, I agree with you though. On his, you know, he's trying to get the ball in the guy's hands. I get it.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a way to get that kid involved first year, ready to rock. You know.
Yeah, definitely.
But I think you did touch on it. The Tebow thing. The Tebow thing is probably the most interesting development down in Jacksonville. Now, did he signed with Jacksonville, or are they still?
I think they're still working.
They're
still working through that.
Okay.
All the indications have been that he's going to, though. So, you know, kind of what it's looking like.
It'll definitely be interesting to see. We finally got what everyone told him he should have done since the beginning. But also, I got to respect Tim Tebow for not wanting to do that. You know, and saying, "Hey, I'm going to go live this out." And you know that guy's coming into training camp in just like the best physical shape of his life.
Oh, no doubt. No doubt about it. Like, come on. He looks huge. There's some of the pictures of him. He looks fucking huge, man.
Yeah.
Like it's insane.
So that'll be interesting to see. And you know, he's the type of guy that he will definitely put in the work to become the best tight end.
Yes.
I mean, you watch him with his baseball career and stuff like that. Like that dude, he knows two things. He knows God and he knows hard work.
That's it. That's what it is, man. Put it on a t-shirt. That dude could get it tatted on him. That is all he knows for real.
That he's the equivalent of SpongeBob's fine dining and breathing. It's God and hard work, you know.
That's all he's got, man.
Let everything else sort itself out. So
hey, sometimes that's all you need, right? I can't, you know.
Absolutely.
Big Tebow fans here on this show.
Yeah, for sure.
Big Tebow fans.
You know, switching positions is definitely a tough thing to do, especially when that's quarterback to tight end. Now the Giants signed Kelvin Benjamin from a wide receiver to a tight end. So he's going to come into that Giants offense as a tight end, which, to be honest, I think for him is probably a move that will benefit him tremendously. He didn't always get it going or wasn't able to put those complete games in. I think a lot of people thought it had to be the Cam Newton era. Interesting to see if put him as a tight end, maybe as a third or fourth option for Daniel Jones over there in New York. You got Saquon Barkley in the backfield. That could be an offense that surprises a lot of people and puts some things together if Kelvin Benjamin as a tight end pans out. I'll be interesting to see how he does blocking and things like that, you know, in the run game. But I think it's clear that they're clearly bringing him in as a wide receiver threat at the tight end position.
Yeah, I mean 6'5", 250. He's a big ass dude, and you throw him out there. What I'm curious to see is because I think he could work in that spot, and then like we talked about with Tebow, right? It's similar. I wonder if it pans out this year, right? A lot of teams in the NFL that have success, especially right now, have very good tight end play. I wonder if if, like you said, if that Giants offense looks good with him in that spot, do we see some guys look to make that transition, especially as they get a little later in their career? Some of these bigger wide receivers, do they look to make that transition? As they get a little older, like if how it's a copycat league, and it's like if Kelvin Benjamin has some success at tight end next season, you might
For
see
sure.
4 or 5 guys jump over to tight end. You've got, and
Ye-
some of these tight ends that got drafted are these weird hybrid guys, right? Where
Yep.
they can kind of they look like receivers. They'll line up in the slot sometimes. They'll line up out like, or almost like it's like they'll line up off of the line, really. Like they'll kind of be like
Yep.
in these weird like gadget kind of spots, and I think teams like it. So I would not be
Yep.
shocked to see this become a trend.
Yeah. And take a guy that like Mercedes Lewis, who's been in the league for a long time at the tight end
Yep.
position, but that's not a guy that's overly big, like muscles, like obviously taller and things like that, but he's not someone who's huge. So, it really could be a thing where some of these bigger wide receivers, make that shift, especially a guy toward the end of his career that wants to play another 4 or 5 years in the league. That I think we might see that shift actually happen more and more throughout the league, which is something that is interesting. I like to see the hybrid of the NFL where, things change and like before you know it, like you have a ton of quarterbacks going in the first round.
Yeah, absolutely.
And which is something that,
Absolutely.
historically wasn't always the case, but now you've seen the change and everyone realized it in the NFL, like, oh no, we do need a great, a franchise quarterback. So maybe with this, maybe it takes a little longer because it's probably not something as noticeable. But I think if Kelvin Benjamin revitalizes his career with the Giants, it's definitely gonna turn some heads in that direction. And I think you got a guy with Daniel Jones who can get him the ball.
Yeah, for sure.
So I think that will be nice. In the NFL, who we don't really know who's going to be getting their wide receivers the ball at the beginning of the year.
Yeah.
And
Yes,
I
we
think
do.
you know who I'm talking about.
I know exactly what you're
And
talking about.
That would be the Chicago Bears. Matt Nagy comes out and says Andy Dalton will get the first team rep. So we're just what to make of this. I mean, Dalton, he's your guy. I mean, he's your guy. I've talked to Bears fans, and some of them say Andy Dalton. Some of them are very excited about Justin Fields. Like I said, I think Justin Fields, they might have found their guy. But as John Madden famously says, when you got 2 quarterbacks, you got one. No, just kidding. When you got 2 quarterbacks, you got none, is what they say.
That is what he says, yes.
So we'll see. Now, I think the era of football has moved a little bit from the John Madden era? I do, but I still think when you have 2 quarterbacks, you have none. Because the problem with that is now you really have to be able to analyze which of these quarterbacks is going to help your team. And you have to do it in such a way that your fan base is on board with your decision. And I think that's something that the Chicago Bears get wrong so many times.
Just infinite amount of times.
They do their decision, and then the fans react, but it's not like, hey, we're laying this out so you understand. Like maybe when you get a first round quarterback, you don't put them all over your Instagram page.
Yeah, that might be
all
something
over your Instagram page.
That might be a good idea.
That's just because to me that's actually the expectation. Now I understand if it's a few, like you come in, he gets his draft picture, a couple of pictures of him at the facility, stuff like that. But you can't turn your whole page because like now Andy Dalton, I mean, obviously he has people on his team, within his team that they're going to let him know that. And I think Andy Dalton knew what he was getting into when he was coming to the Bears. So, I mean, he's probably not extremely shocked. He knows he's in for a battle. And I think Andy Dalton will bring his best, and that'll be exciting to see. But I'm going to be honest, Nick, I just don't see Andy Dalton starting past week 3.
I couldn't agree with you more. This is not some this is not Skip and Shannon. We're not gonna. This is not. I'm not taking the other side of that argument. I agree wholeheartedly. I think yeah, that's the nature of the Bears, man. In the history of the Bears, this is what they do. This is what Bears fans do. We know it well. You know, you and I know it very well.
Yeah.
Like this is what they do. I don't know if this is what they were doing back with George Hallis. You know, I'm not that old, but like in my lifetime, I mean, for 30 years, this has been what the Bears do. They just have an absolute dumpster fire at quarterback, and the fans are very quick to want a new quarterback when things go poorly. And I agree with you. I think Andy Dalton comes out this year. I think he throws, a pick. Like the first time he throws a pick this year, they'll be chanting for Justin Fields. It's the reality of it. Like you have to name Andy Dalton the starter. I get it. I understand why that story's out there. You kind of have to, but man, like that fan base does not give a shit about that. They really do not care. Like the Bears name Matt Nagy coming out and saying Andy Dalton's our starter means literally nothing to the Chicago Bears fan base.
No.
It's not like they trust him, and
You
they
could,
shouldn't. They shouldn't trust Matt Nagy, but they definitely do not, and that means nothing to them. They want Justin Fields. That's the reality of it. There's no real other way around it.
yeah, and I think Justin Fields gives you the most upside between the two. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see. And I mean, I will say it, but like I do feel bad for Bears fans because like this is like the situation you do not want to be in with your team. Is
Yes,
you have a
yes,
terrible
100%.
relationship with past quarterbacks, and now this little molehill that was back in the late or back in the 90s
Yep.
has now became a mountain for the Bears to climb this this big task to get a quarterback who is their franchise quarterback that is consistent and does put the best product for the Bears on the table. It'll be interesting to see. Maybe this is the Bears' year, to come and win some games, maybe get over 500.
They might.
Have their guy who does solidify their team at that quarterback position, but it's really going to come down to the front office and the coaching staff. And historically, that's probably been your organization's weakest aspect. And if I was a Bears fan, you've seen some progress this year in terms of what the coaching staff has done and some of the front office organization, but I would definitely be emailing the Bears organization with your frustrations, much like you would a senator or, a councilman or woman. Definitely make your voices heard. Say, hey, we want good football back in Chicago.
Let 'em know.
Because I'll be honest with you, I'm not a Bears fan, but good football back in Chicago is good for the NFL.
100%.
This is the third biggest market team.
Yep.
It's time we get it figured out, Bears. If not for your team's sake, but for the NFL's sake. It just needs to be done. We need powerhouses. We need big city powerhouses. And, Chicago, you got a lot of stuff that attracts people. I don't know how you can't get some of these higher, free agent stuff like that, but definitely got to make a push. I did see over there, staying in that NFC division, Packers did sign Blake Bortles.
Absolutely. Bortles, man.
Which I'm happy about it. Get another veteran guy in there. He's cool, calm, and collected. I think he just adds to that quarterback room dynamic, which will be fun.
Now, let me ask you this. What do you think, like, NFL, like, if you think about it, like, the four largest markets in the NFL, right, are New York, LA, Houston, and Chicago. Those are the four largest markets. If you think about it, like, for the last, but basically ever since Eli Manning won that last Super Bowl, the Jets and Giants are awful.
Yep.
The Bears have been awful. The Texans have been awful. And the LA Chargers have been awful. So I kind of wonder to myself, like, what does the NFL look like in a situation where the Jets, the Giants, the Bears, the Texans, the Rams, the Chargers are all competitive in the same year? We haven't really seen it. And I guess my question is, like, is that the type of thing that the NFL just bangs their head against the wall at their headquarters? Like, come on. We would be worth 10 times more if these cities could figure it out. The teams in these cities could figure it out.
So yeah, I don't know if the NFL is really banging their head against the wall because a lot of these, big market teams that underperform, I mean, they are still, I mean, they're still probably one of the biggest revenue builders in the NFL. And
Yep.
and the NFL does have like programs in to help like the smaller market teams. So I mean, I think the NFL has kind of had like a level approach to it, but I'm sure they do. Well, they've had a level approach to it in history, but I'm sure they do beat their heads against the wall because, yeah, if those teams that you just named were all killing it, yeah, the NFL would be it would be nuts. I think, especially worldwide, if you got those big market cities.
Absolutely. I think that's, I
So
think it's an interesting thing because other sports really have had success in those big markets over the last 20 years, and the NFL has struggled with it. I mean, if it wasn't for the Patriots and Boston being like a larger market, it's tough. I think it's tough when you've got, Kansas City I like the people of Kansas City. I'm all for it. But when Kansas City and Tampa and places like that are what's holding up your league, Green Bay, that's tough when those are
yeah,
the markets that you're really trying to, showcase. I think it's tough when it's those smaller
yeah,
markets. So, hopefully, like you said, hopefully a team like the Bears can get it figured out. Giants, right? We talked about them. Hopefully some of those larger markets, Texans, can get it
absolutely.
figured out.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think this year with the fans being back, Nick, do you have like a take on that about fans being back and how that could affect these teams and maybe help those bigger market teams out?
I do, yeah. So it's interesting. Last season, you had the first season in NFL history where you you didn't have a chance like the home teams had a losing record for the first time in NFL history. That's what I was trying to spit out there. So first time in NFL history, your teams have a home teams had a losing record, and obviously there weren't fans in the stands, right? So I'm not saying that it's necessarily that's a fact. It's a small sample size. It's one season, but you would think that due to COVID, realistically speaking, that is why home teams had the first ever losing record. Bring the fans back. Now all of a sudden that home field advantage comes back stronger than ever. But what I'm the most fascinated by, and I wrote about this in the newsletter today, is the fact that in the NFL this season, they're going to play 17 games, right? So now teams are going to get an additional game, an additional home game, but it only happens to half the league. The other half of the league has to play that game on the road. So half of the league this year
Mm,
is getting fans back and an additional home game. And I think at the end of the day, that's not only going to have a factor this year, I think that'll be proven. But I think that extra home game is going to be a factor to the point where the NFL will probably next season be at 18 games because the teams that are on the road for that game this year that lose that game and it impacts them in the playoffs are going to be frustrated enough to the point of like, why don't we just do 18? And at that
yeah,
point, the NFL wants to do 18. We all know that money grab. And so I think realistically, like I
yep,
think it's going to play out this season with the fans back. I think it's going to be an advantage, but I also think it's going to help shape the league moving forward because I really do think it's going to lead to adding that 18th game. Because to be honest, like there's no other way to slice it. Like home field advantage matters, and you're giving half of the league like an extra home game. I don't see how that's sustainable long term. So I think it probably results in adding that 18th game eventually. And I shouldn't even say eventually. I think it'll be as soon as 2022. But anyway, yeah, I think the fans coming back this year is going to be a big factor, and you'll see that. I think you'll see some of these teams that traditionally have a home field advantage. I think you'll see them play pretty well this season. So yeah, it's something to definitely keep an eye on. I mean,
yeah,
I kind of can't believe that it was the first time they ever had a losing record, the home teams. So kind of
yeah,
crazy.
yeah. That is kind of wild, and especially because you have those veteran quarterbacks that can go into an opponent's arena, like the Aaron Rodgers, Tom Brady's, the Russell Wilsons, those types of players that can go in and without that crowd atmosphere, they can hear everything, they can communicate to their team on their offensive side. Like that's a cheat code essentially to be able to
Yep. Yep.
communicate with your offensive side, which is
Absolutely.
normally not the case when you're going to the opposing team's venue.
Yeah, absolutely.
wherever that may be.
Absolutely. I think
So
it's a storyline to keep an eye on this year. Absolutely.
absolutely. So when you're vaccinated and you're back in the stadium, make sure you're tearing your head off for your
You
team.
got to.
Make some noise. Make it difficult. Let's really put the science behind this now, and let's do some analysis and just see how big of an impact us fans can make. Because that's what we stand for over here at Fancast TV.
Yep.
You know, especially the Monday evening Fancast. It's what we do. We are fans, guys. We need to sell. Do we do the best job when we can, when we're at the stadium, to give our team an advantage? I'm going to say a lot of teams don't. I'm going to say a lot of teams do. But keep that in mind when we get back out there and when we do this thing.
The 12th man matters, right? The
Guys,
fans.
it's
the
been
fans
a lot
matter.
of fun today. The 12th man matters. Yeah, unless it's the Seattle Seahawks 12th man. In that case, they could pipe it down just a little bit. It does get a little too loud in there. I think we need to look at the engineering of that stadium. I think there might be some regulations that need to be altered just so it makes it a little less so loud. They do get some noise complaints down at the police department there. So, you know, Seattle, maybe look into that. But, guys, Monday evening football preview tonight, preview show. We got the Raiders versus the Ravens. We got Derek Carr. He's still the quarterback over there, right?
Yeah, as of right now, he certainly is. Him and John Gruden making it happen.
Yep. And I think maybe one offensive lineman they got in the draft, I believe.
That's about their whole team.
They let everyone else go. So
Team.
We'll be talking about that. And then Lamar Jackson, who, you know, it'd be an interesting year to see what he comes up with on the Madden cover. I think that plays into our, you know, analysis of the game. But that'll be a very exciting one. And I believe that's at 8 Central, 9 Eastern. You know how those things go. And then whatever it is on the East Coast time or West Coast times.
Absolutely.
We don't know those. But, guys, it's been a pleasure bringing Monday Evening Football Daily Show to you with Nick. And, hey, jabronis, you go have a great Monday. I don't know, maybe go watch Pat McAfee or something.
Something like that. We'll see you guys later.